Good afternoon, this is Corporal Justin Freed. Today we'll be conducting a movement under fire drill in accordance with 071-COM-052. A quick safety brief before we get started today. We're in an outdoors environment, so please be aware of any hazards in the area so we don't trip and fall and hurt ourselves. And it is a little hot outside, so please be sure you're hydrating throughout the day to make sure that we don't have any heat casualties. When we're out on the course today, if you brought any trash with you, any food, any papers, or anything you might leave behind, be sure to pick that up. We have trash cans available, and we're going to be going by the Army Green policy, which is reuse, reduce, and recycle. So please don't leave anything out here on the range. We're going to leave the range as clean as we got it today. Some environmental controls I have set out today to make sure that our training goes smooth. We're away from any roads for any vehicles, and we've also removed any unnecessary personnel from the area. So we will be able to conduct our training with no interruptions and no safety hazards. I'm now going to move into PCC and PCI inspections. So please make sure you get on your plate carrier, your ACH, a pair of safety glasses, and I have my weapon here. No weapons have magazines in them and their chambers are cleared. Also, all of our magazines have been cleared to make sure they're empty. So please go ahead and get all that on. Okay, thank you. I've conducted my PCC and PCI inspections, and all my soldiers are prepared and ready for the training. Alright, now we're going to get into our task conditions and standards for today's exercise. Our task is movement under direct fire. Conditions: you are a member of a team conducting movement to contact and are under enemy fire from an enemy position that is 250 to 300 meters away from your position. You have an individual weapon, individual combat equipment, and a current firing position that provides cover from the enemy's direct fire. Some iterations of this task should be performed in Mount 4. Standards: move within 100 meters of the enemy position using appropriate movement techniques based on the situation and terrain. Some considerations before we get into today's exercise is none of the lanes will be running Mount 4 today. We're going to be running just in regular combat equipment. And first we're going to demonstrate the high crawl technique. Alright, we'll now be moving into the high crawl demonstration. Go ahead and insert a magazine into your weapon and show me that it's clear. Alright, and assume the high crawl position. For the high crawl, you're going to keep your body off the ground, rest your weight of your forearm on your forearms and lower legs. Cradle the weapon in your arms. Keep the muzzle of your weapon clear of the ground. Keep your knees behind your buttocks so it stays low. And move forward alternately, advancing your right elbow and left knee and left elbow and right knee. Conduct the exercise. As you were, demonstrator. Now we'll be conducting the low crawl technique. Assume the low crawl position. For the low crawl, you're going to keep your body as flat as possible to the ground. Grasp the sling of the weapon at the upper sling swivel with your right hand. In this exercise, we do not have a sling swivel, so we'll be grasping by the barrel, as the barrel is not hot due to shooting rounds. Your left hand will guide the rest of your forearm in front of your body. Keep the muzzle of the weapon off the ground. Move forward. Push both arms forward while pulling your right leg forward. Pull on the ground with both arms while pushing with your right leg. Repeat steps A and B until you reach your next position. Conduct the exercise. As you were, demonstrator. Next is the rush technique. First, you will raise your head to select your next position. Then you will lower your head, draw your arms into your body, pull your right leg forward, and raise your body. Get up quickly. Run for 3 to 5 seconds, saying, "I'm up, he sees me, I'm down." Plant both feet just before hitting the ground, fall forwards, and drop to your knees. Slide your right hand down to the heel of the butt of your weapon and break your fall with the butt of your weapon. Continue using movement techniques until you reach your final firing position. Demonstrator, prepare to conduct the rush technique. Demonstrator, demonstrate the rush technique. I'm up. He sees me.
I'm down.
Occupy your identified firing position within 100 meters of the enemy position. Assume a firing position and engage the enemy with your individual weapon.
Bang! Bang! Bang!
As you were, demonstrator. Following that demonstration, is there any questions? Okay, there's no questions. We'll now give you 10 minutes to practice the task as demonstrated by my demonstrator. Your 10 minutes begins now. Okay, that was your 10 minutes to practice. We are now going to get into the evaluation phase. Before we get started, is there any questions that you came up with during your practice? Okay, there's no questions. Before we get started into our evaluation phase, I'm going to reread you your task conditions and standards. I'm now going to reread your task conditions and standards for today's exercise. Our task is movement under direct fire. Conditions: you're a member of a team conducting movement to contact and are under fire from an enemy position that is 250 to 300 meters away from your current position. You have an individual weapon system, individual combat equipment, and a current firing position that provides cover from the enemy's direct fire. Some iterations of this task should be performed in MOP 4. Standards for this task: you will move within 100 meters of the enemy position using appropriate movement techniques based on the situation and terrain. Some considerations before we get into today's task: no iterations will be run in MOP 4. Everything will just be used in individual combat equipment. I will now get into evaluating every member of the squad. After the task of moving under direct fire, every soldier of the squad was at go, and they are trained. Again, there is no no-goes. Every soldier is a go, and they are trained in this task. I will now conduct my final PCC and PCI inspection to make sure I have all my training aids and equipment back, and I do have them in front of me. Everything we started with, we have back, and we have done a range sweep of the range to make sure there is no trash left on the range. And we will now conduct an after-action report. Before we move into the after-action report, I want to read a couple of my rules for the AAR to keep everybody in line. Everybody is welcomed and welcome to participate in the after-action report. I welcome every question you have. The next rule is nobody will talk over one another. If somebody has a question, that soldier will ask their question and then be addressed. Everyone will wait to be called on before speaking. Nobody will speak over each other, and I will call on each individual soldier as they ask questions. Everyone will remain respectful to all the soldiers despite different viewpoints and variations of their questions. And everyone will stick to the proposed question of the after-action report. There will be no extra questions that is not proposed. First, we're going to get into what was actually supposed to happen during this task throughout the day. First, I introduced myself in the class and what we'll be conducting today, which was movement under fire. I then conducted my safety brief to inform all the soldiers of the different variation of hazards and what we could face today. I then conducted a PCC and PCI inspection to make sure every soldier had the proper training equipment, and I also loaned a weapon to them so they're able to conduct training. I then went over the task conditions and standards of the event to make sure every soldier was clear on the task conditions and standards. The event was then demonstrated by my demonstrator so the soldiers can get a first-hand see at exactly the task that they needed to do. I then asked if there's any questions after the demonstration that could be cleared up before practice. We then moved into practice exercises so the soldier had time to practice their event before the evaluation started. After the practice, I reread the task conditions and standards before we moved into our evaluation phase, so every soldier was clear of what they would be evaluated on. I then evaluated the squad, which everyone was a go at, so that was great. I then completed a final PCC and PCI inspection to make sure all my gear was returned to me and all the training aids were clear. And lastly, we moved into our AAR. First question for the after-action report was what actually happened today. Okay, thank you for going over what happened today. The second question is what went wrong and what went right today during training. Okay, thank you for your input of what went wrong and what went right. I'll take that into consideration. And lastly, how can I improve training for next time that we complete this task? Thank you for your feedback. I'll consider that next time I conduct training. This completes my after action report. In the after action report, we went over what actually happened, what went wrong and right during the tasks and my teaching, and how I can improve training for next time. Before we end today, was there any injuries that any soldier sustained during today's tasks? No, there was no injuries. That's great. All my controls worked for the environment we were in, and I'll take that into consideration next time we complete training. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation today in both the task and the after action report so I can better myself in training. At this time, I would complete my evaluation paperwork for the squad.
Oh, hello.
Okay, at this point, all my evaluation paperwork is complete of the squad. At this point, there is no follow-on instructions for any soldiers as we all train to go. This concludes my training, and I would now like to request to close the training site, and you are dismissed.